it's sacrilege talking over a Clash song. Well, we have so much to talk about with our guest. James C. Bradfield's here, bank robber by the Clash. Welcome back, Lamo and 6Music. And do you have a favourite Clash? I mean, that must be the hardest question in the world. What's your favourite Clash song?
Off the top of my head at the moment, I'm going for Hitsville UK kind of
Are you?
period at the moment.
Have you? So do you go through phases where?
As well.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Right. But does it go round in circles? Sometimes I go back to the first album and I think, oh, actually, you can't beat Johnny Jones. And then I always come back to kind of Lost in the Supermarket or Garage Land, you know, I always come, or Stay Free, off Give 'Em Enough Rope. But I am going through a bit of a Sandinista period at the moment. Are you?
You know, One More Time, stuff like Hitsville, Lightning Strikes, just great records.
Did you? I mean, I've certainly, years down the line, appreciated some of the subtleties of those records, which I probably didn't get at the time. And the different changes in atmosphere of those albums.
I mean, kind of, you know, to be fair, you know, kind of there's some mad stuff in there, you know, obviously. I think it's not sacrilege to say that you could have distilled Sandinista down to one brilliant album. But, like, it does, like, when you go through all those records, like, you know, whether it be Exile on Main Street, or whether it be, you know, Magnetic Fields, whether it be Sandinista, you do kind of, like, in time dig up things which you didn't quite understand when you were younger. And, like, you know, and you start to appreciate them more, definitely.
Well, one of the things I was thinking over the weekend, when I was thinking, I'm going to sit down with James, and I was listening to the album, I was thinking, you're in completely unknown territory now. If you compare yourself to somebody like The Clash, because you've gone past the 5-6 hours, where most of the bands that we grew up with fell apart after about 4 or 5 records, didn't they, or split?
It did, and kind of, we have done that little exercise of, like, looking at which bands, you know, got to their 10th album and stuff, and obviously you come up with, you know, people like the Stones and stuff like that, and but kind of still, you know, it's a sliding scale, isn't it? You know, all your favourite bands, except for the Pistols, kind of get to that 4th album, and you always deep down know that that band's truly going to become itself on its 3rd or 4th album. And the upsetting thing now is that kind of, like, you know, bands really are clinging on to get past their 2nd album now. They're never going to get to that kind of, like, you know, the golden bar of the 3rd or 4th album where they truly kind of, like, you know, turn into a beautiful butterfly and become what they always wanted to be. So when did that happen to you? When did you feel like when did you feel comfortable enough within yourselves that you thought this is I think we're now beginning to find the root of this band? I'll have to give you a really kind of strange in-between kind of answer.
Okay.
I think, you know, once we come out the other end of Everything Must Go, which obviously, you know, this indelibly linked with lots of things that happen, I think once we'd done Everything Must Go, and then we looked back at the Holy Bible, we realised that, you know, that there were 2 versions of us. You know, that we did have this weird kind of shape-shifting ability to be, you know, the same band and at the same time kind of like shape-shifting in 2 different versions of it. So I realised after Everything Must Go, we realised that kind of like that we would always have to try and walk the line between those 2 versions. And so therefore I knew that we were, you know, not completely original, but kind of unique.
And you, to a certain extent, you're still doing this, aren't you? I mean, I was going to ask, I mean, in terms of making records, I'm sure every band, when they make an album, it's a reaction to the last one in some way. But is that partly behind Postcards, the new album? Because it's a different sort of record. Obviously, it has to be, because it's, you know, it's Nicky's lyrics again on this record, and the last record was Richey's lyrics. Yeah. But there seems to be, you know, it seems to be the opposite end slightly to what you do. It
does, yeah, no, completely. You know, being completely honest, I suppose, you know, Postcards from a Young Man is a follow-up to Send Away the Tigers. Yeah. With Journal for Plague Lovers in between that period. And the simple fact is that when we were doing Journal for Plague Lovers, you know, it was the first time that Nick wasn't writing any of the lyrics for that record. Yeah. He was part of the band with me and Sean, writing music and playing the music that we were set into Richey's lyrics. Right. So I think for the first time ever, he had a long time to actually really focus his mind and decide what album the lyrics were going to, you know, push, you know, the direction in. You know, so he had real time to bed down and develop his themes across the record.
Oh, there's a few of those things. Because one of the interesting things, the last record was lyrics from the past, and this seems to be almost reflecting on parts of the past, or at least catching up with it. And reevaluating it.
Yeah, and I think we've done that before. I think, you know, in a strange kind of way, a song like If You Tolerate This, Your Children Will Be Next. Yeah. Used the past to illustrate perhaps what was missing from the present. Yeah. And I think, you know, that's present on this album as well, but in a much more personal sense.
Musically this time, had you written much before you went to the studio? Do you write all the time still?
Yeah, we do. I mean, kind of like, it's still the best moment for me is still when I get a lyric and I know that there's a certain challenge there, and kind of I know that kind of I mustn't let Nick or Sean down by writing the wrong music. And also it's just much more interesting now. When Nick has written 3 tunes on the record as well, which has just made it much more of an interesting experience for me, because sometimes I'll walk in the studio, I know that I've just got to try and get the guitar part right for one of Nick's tunes, and that's quite a strange experience for me.
Well, particularly when Nick's coming up with all these, it's going to sound like, it's going to sound like Spandau Ballet playing Motown Junk in a bunker in Berlin.
I think you've miscast the play there. It was ABBA playing with Van Halen, Queen playing with the Supremes and stuff like that. And
but he seems to write there. Here's the blueprint. Now try and do that.
The Nicky Y mission statement.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. It's kind of like, to be honest, that's the way I've always been comfortable working within a band. When it was Nick and Richey, I was very aware that kind of like that myself and Sean were going in one musical direction, and they were going in a theoretical direction, and we always had to try and meet in the middle. Yeah. But the aesthetic of like Nick and Richey's ideas always seemed to rub off in the music, whether it be wearing tight white jeans or kind of like having stencil slogans on our shirts. It would feed in to the music. Like, when we decided to go with the military gear for Holy Bible, way before any of the music was written, it kind of had an effect on the music. It had an effect on something like Faster, which is a very straight line of a song and is very disciplined. And those kind of like military crows kind of did feed into that.
So what's it like? Do you almost put yourself in character then? Is it almost like he's writing a stage direction, or as, sort of shaded out a character and then you get into it?
You're pushing me into kind of saying unforgivably pretentious things here.
Would I?
All right then. I think there is since I've got my drum roll level.
Go on.
Sometimes it feels like there's an element of like you trying to imply a bit of method.
Yeah.
Where not so much now, but it's definitely in the past with stuff like the Bible and at the start where you felt as if the whole aesthetic, the whole idea, the clothes, wherever, would kind of help you find, your right kind of like character.
Yeah. But I can imagine that, and I can see that. But it's still essentially you. Yeah. It's just finding a different facet of you and what you want to be. I think that's what made me remember.
There is a kind of the minutiae of it is quite scary sometimes. I mean, when Nick, we were in Serbia, we were doing Exit Festival, and I came into my room and he'd written like his mission statement down on some stationery, and the station was like pink and gold. And he was trying to kind of like, communicate me to, there was something about the pink and gold on the paper, which he wanted reflected in the music.
Right. It's got to sound pink and gold.
A wee bit,
So you do talk about it then? You do sort of sit down and talk about it a little bit? And did you ever actually have to get him to translate what he's written, or do you prefer to have your own interpretation?
Sometimes with Nick and Richey, that's kind of been the same with both of them. Sometimes Nick or Richey would have said this song is about that, and other times they'll let kind of like myself or Sean go in our own direction. They'll let us interpret what the lyric is trying to drive towards. So kind of it can go both ways in that sense. And it still is, my motivation, for trying to write music is trying to transfer what, the lyric is trying to import to people. I mean, like, when you see a lyric like Faster in front of you, you know that there's something at stake. Yeah. When you see a lyric like Design for Life in front of you, you know there's something at stake. So it just feels like there's a pressure to get it right, I suppose.
And there's some great titles and some great tunes on this album. We'll play another one. It's our 6Music album of the day today. You won't have heard this track yet from the album, which is out today from the Manics. This is Golden Platitudes. It is from the Manics' new album, Postcards from a Young Man. That's Golden Platitudes. Is that Nicky Wire's appreciation or summarisation of politics over the past decade? I can't work it out.
No, it was kind of like it was a pre-election address in his head kind of thing to himself more than anybody. I think that song started as a very introspective thing.
That's good. I'm relieved, because I was sitting there thinking, I wonder if it is. If I'd had his phone number, I'd have phoned him yesterday. What is this, Wire? What's this about?
I think it was about the simple fact that kind of like that kind of, at the end of kind of like what was obviously becoming the end of Labour's term, that kind of you realise that you had no political side at that given time, that you were a bit stranded. That like, a Labour government that achieved quite a lot at the start with devolution and certain good bits of, militaristic intervention and the minimum wage and the Good Friday Agreement, then it all turned to dust. And it was just a song about that kind of like bittersweet feeling of just thinking, what happened to my side?
There is a feeling of sort of reappraising certain aspects of, I don't know, society and how you feel. There's certainly still, I think Nicky said it himself, there's still a rage in this record. There's certainly a restlessness, even if it's not overt anger.
Restlessness is a good word. It's not one that people would usually use, but I think that's kind of accurate, really. Just because I think we just. I think we're still just quite nerdy people deep down, kind of like still watch This Week and Question Time and Meet the Press on CNBC and stuff like that. And still buy, newspapers at certain times of the week for certain columnists. And just still enjoy politics, still find it entertaining. But, just before that election, it was obvious that kind of like, that the game was up and we were entering into new territory where you would feel as if perhaps you were a voter without a home.
And within yourselves, have you looked at what the band have achieved? One of my favourite tracks on the record is, what's it called? All We Make Is Entertainment.
Yeah.
I mean, both musically and lyrically, it's a great track. But it also feels like we're still trying, but we're appreciating how far we can get now.
I mean, kind of, it's a really old-fashioned song, that, in terms of... sometimes it's kind of, one of the parts of, like, being the Manics is kind of like that. It's Nickel, and in the past Richey, but, obviously now Nick would give you that lyric and he'd say, well, this is a song about the disenfranchisement of the blue-collar kind of like tradesman class in Britain. Write a tune to it. And, it is a song that comes from another age. It's about how... Britain kind of like, wouldn't intervene for like, for certain car manufacturers and steel workers in Deeside, and obviously Cadbury's being bought by Kraft and stuff like that. And they always used the kind of motto that, you can't interfere with markets. And then when the banks went belly up, suddenly they interfere with the market. And we know why they had to, obviously. But it's a song about that. It's just saying, Labour turned on its own creed and just wouldn't intervene and save industries. And it's important to have kind of like a dignity in a country where you produce and make things.
And what about, let's talk about some of the other tracks on the record then. Obviously, Descent has got, it's almost a big 80s rock tune in place. It's got certainly a feel of that, although it's quite maudlin.
It's a touch of my yellow fascination on it.
Oh, is it?
Early 80s, late era yellow.
What's late era? Is that Mr. Blue Sky?
No,
or is it later?
That's prime time.
Right, is it?
No, we're on about
Discovery.
Well, the bridge between it's a bridge between Discovery and kind of Secret Messages, I suppose.
Oh, okay.
All
right.
But yeah, I mean, kind of like that kind of bucked the trend. Because that was one of our first tour songs in a long time.
Right.
It was written on the journey from LA to the Midwest, I think, on the bus. And we never write songs on the bus because, they always end up being disastrous. Baby, I'm missing you. I'm holding on the line. But you're not at home and all that kind of stuff. And so we try not to write songs on the road, and thank God it didn't turn out bad.
Yeah, particularly in the States, because it's all about motels and laundry. Where's the next laundromat?
You're trying to find another version of the Wichita Lineman, that metaphor and everything. So,
Hazelton Avenue.
Yeah, that song's.
Do you know why I looked it up on Street Map just to see if there was a Hazelton Avenue? That's how nerdy I am.
It is quite a salubrious kind of part of the world. It's just about kind of the flip side of. Sometimes you can rail against, the society, the consumer society you live in, but that's about actually being in the middle of a city and just getting lost in a stationery shop and a record store for like 3 hours and just feeling as if you've achieved some kind of splendid isolation in the middle of a city.
Yeah, it seems to be almost about a new suburbia or an escape from a new suburbia. But it's typical of finding things which are still, I don't know, it's still having things to rail against, I suppose. Or not finding things necessarily, but still finding these things do, as I say, make you just a little bit unsettled during the course of a day.
Yes, that's definitely always been like, one of our prime motivators. But I think the one thing that's changed about this is that equally we'll go on now write about things that completely inspire us as well.
Yeah.
Like a song.
So a celebration as well as
yeah. So like a song like Hazelton Avenue or I Think I Found It, tend to kind of like veer to the positive side of life, dare I say it.
Guests on the record? Ian McCulloch's on one track.
Yeah, I mean, it's mad to have Mac on the record, because he was the first person that myself, Richey and Sean saw in concert in, I think it was 1985 or 84, I can't remember. Yeah. Bristol, Colson Hall on the Ocean Rain tour, and it's still my best gig of all time. Right. And
did you tell him that?
Of course I did, yeah. I completely in that league. Kind of like, I was like a geezer. I just like gushed. I just told him my favourite B-side was Angels and Devils. The best ever live version of Do It Clean was on the flip side of the 12-inch of Killing Moon from Royal Albert Hall. Excellent. And I did this massive direct. He was like, all right then. It's just like,
do I go in the booth now?
Yeah, no, but to be honest, he was brilliant in the studio. He was just like, he really, really took his time over the vocal. He was worried that he wasn't finding the right kind of voice, so he started again. And then the Cavousier came out, but kind of he just nailed it. And it was still a slightly surreal experience for us,
Who else is on it?
We've got John Cale from Velvet Underground, and I've done some work with him over the years since around about 1998. And he's my favourite solo artist of all time. I think Fear and Paris 1919 is two towering solo records are just two of my favourite records. And I kind of vaguely know him, and I kind of summoned up the courage to ask him if he'd play piano on this one track, because I just knew that his style would fit it. And he's just a Welsh hero of ours. It was always this mad thing when I was young. I listened to a track called The Gift off White Light, White Heat, and like Velvet Underground, and I could tell there was this voice narrating through the track, and after a while I was thinking, God, he sounds Welsh. And then I found out John Cale was Welsh, and that kind of gave me a window to the world, that a Welshman had been in the Velvet Underground, the coolest band in the world. So he was always an inspiration in more ways than one.
So we've still ticked off a lot of ambitions and things you could do with this record, haven't we?
It does. It's a tiny bit of a David Bowie pin-up kind of ethos, where we're trying to get some of our heroes on the record. And look, for once, we just found that if you ask people, sometimes they'll say yes. You don't have to have those horrible flashbacks to the school disco where every girl turned you down for a dance. It kind of, sometimes people are prepared to actually say yes and work with you, which is just, it was a brilliant feeling for us.
You're going out on tour. It starts next week. The last time I saw, there was over 30,000 tickets sold already or something. But the one thing that struck me is it like a holiday now? Because when when the band forms in the early days, you're never out of each other's pockets, are you? But as you obviously go off and do other things, you sort of move away. You don't see each other maybe so much. Yeah. Is it like going back to school? Is it like going on holiday? What is it, touring now?
No, I think, kind of like, when Nick and Sean have sometimes had kids, sometimes perhaps they catch up in their sleep on holiday. Right. But apart from that, we do spend a ridiculous amount of time with each other, because we got our studio in Cardiff, and it is like a pretend youth club. We've got our books and our punch bag and our TV in there, and then when we're recording, it's very much got that clubhouse mentality. Yeah. And we do kind of the fact that we've all known each other since we were born. It's just kind of scary. It's scary that we've spent so much time with each other and still not sick of each other, really. So when you go away, I think we've kind of got this weird thing that it's gone past friendship. We're just so indelibly linked in some weird way that kind of like that you go away and actually sometimes feel as if you're on the campaign trail. Sometimes it feels as if you're doing the best job in the world, and sometimes you just feel your age.
Well, there's plenty of time for all that. It lasts well over a month in the UK, leg of the tour at least, to coincide with the release of the new album, which is out today, Postcards from a Young Man. Thank you so much. We could talk for hours on this, but I want to get another track in before we get to the news. And this is, I think I found it. This is yours, isn't it?
This is written with a hangover, one of the most horrible hangovers I've ever had.
Sounds all right for it, I have to say. It's the Manics on 6.